we're on Front Range Facts.
And we're optimists at the end of the day, folks, but some of these aren't.
That's a really good way to clarify this, because this is the price of crude oil.
Oh yeah, and every $10 a barrel goes up, apparently your gas price goes up 25 cents at the pump. So that's why you're paying $1 roughly more in Colorado than you were 3 weeks ago, roughly. So here we are at I think I looked, actually it's about 105 right now for a barrel.
Don't worry, it could get a lot worse.
Yeah. So just stockpile those barrels in your backyard, folks.
That's right. 30-year fixed mortgage rates also have seen the effect from the Iran war, and they're now at 6.5% instead of where they were actually flirting in the fives for about a week.
We said we're optimists. Everything we're showing you is going up. It's great.
It's true. Economic growth ended 2025 weaker than expected. That's also not a great metric, but if you look at it, right, it's not horrible. It's just definitely not the 2% that they were expecting.
Yeah. And there's, it's only been a couple, of those quarters that look recessionary, but then the next quarter wakes up and it isn't. So that's always kind of nice to see.
Yeah.
And this I just thought was interesting to take a look at, because what blew me away was really, when you start looking at the right side of this whole graph, and, we kind of puttered around a plus or minus, few billion here, a few billion there for a number of years. And then all of a sudden, of course, when the economy crashed in 2008, it was a lot about throwing money, at the problem, try to resolve it. But, say what you will,
learn from that.
Well, say what you will about Obama. I mean, he spent, his first term, he had to spend a lot to get us out of it. But then he really, became more in that pattern that we had seen historically, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the guy who, bankrupts casinos has decided to spend lots and lots on our debt. So that's what we're seeing with COVID.
We've been seeing a lot of spending since COVID, and it honestly just hasn't come back. The biggest problem here, right, is the fact that we have this ballooning debt ceiling, right?
So $1 trillion a year in interest payments now, folks.
Yeah, it's actually more expensive than Social Security or really
more than we spend on defense. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, so that's becoming the real issue. And this is what we've seen in past with countries that have started to see a lot of issues, because that burden of debt is actually creating a 50-pound backpack on you when you're trying to do it.
As the song says, we're turning Japanese. Yes, we think so. Because they have like 200% debt to GDP.
Yeah.
Debt to GDP. It's nuts. This is one thing I just wanted to bring up too. This is Navy Federal Credit Union's chief economist, Heather Long. We had a government shutdown, which everyone has already forgotten about, because now we're in a war with Iran, and every day there's something new in the news cycle. But back in 25, if you want to go in the Wayback Machine, there was a government shutdown. If you don't remember, they expect the economy to bounce back from there, but it's not like it's harmless. Is what she's basically saying. There's resiliency of the economy. It's doing great, overall. But, in some ways, of course, there's headwinds to it. But we're seeing with, of course, like the growth of AI is really magically erasing a lot of problems that we have in the country economically.
Yeah. And now when you look at home purchase cancellations, they're a record high right now. Now, granted, we're not talking massive changes, right?
Yeah.
Every year since basically the pandemic, we've been sitting close to about 13%, 13.1% for 3 straight years. So far this year, we're at 13.7%. So slightly elevated, nothing to, rage a bunch of red flags about, but it's definitely not a good sign.
Yeah. I mean, what, is kind of surprising though, is when you look at 2020 being 11.5, that was COVID. I mean, like, freaking half of everything canceled during that, month period of shutdown or whatever else. So I still find it kind of remarkable that we're 2 points higher, than that.
Yeah. All right. Well, what about this one, Jim?
Looking more, microscopically at where are those homes really being canceled? It's mainly in areas that, have seen a lot of home growth. The South, the Rust Belt, as they call it, Texas saw a lot of home growth and did really well during COVID with people moving there. Same with Florida, same with Georgia and Vegas. Ohio, it seems a little bit odd to me. I don't know what market factors are going on in Ohio to cancel contracts and be number 3rd in the nation for that, though.
All right, tips for sellers.
I thought that, it'd be good to just point out a couple things. If you are thinking of selling in this market where we are seeing some price depreciations occur locally and nationwide, keep an eye on that market. And if you're not moving, it's probably best to do a 2 to 5% price decrease. And also, if you're an agent working with a seller, or if you're a seller, you should be having conversations about what inspection might look like and what potential issues might arise, because you are going to have to do some negotiation on there. You should expect to get, not necessarily a laundry list of things you got to correct, but some things that may not have been an issue a few years ago are issues now.
Okay, so the top 9 things that might fall on a home inspection. All right, structural and foundational repairs. Obviously, this is one that people don't really want to move into a house with. Aging or damaged roofs. This has really become more of an issue, especially with insurance, right?
Yeah.
And then once we took about outdated or falling apart plumbing,
plumbing. Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's about 1 out of 5 sewer scopes come back with issues. It's pretty really common.
Housing is aging, right?
Yeah, and those electrical systems, man. I looked at some electrical boxes this week that were freaking deadly.
That's too funny. Not a good sign.
No.
But the other thing that we see tons is we see a lot of HVAC stuff, right? I think we see probably this more on closing statements than anything.
Yeah. And then, we're in a drier state. Water damage and mold isn't a huge issue, but it comes up every year on deals for sure. There are leaks that happen. Mold can happen even in Colorado. And, drainage and grading ties into that oftentimes. And that grading also ties into why your structure, your foundation might be having issues, right?
Yeah, pest and insect damage. This is a problem in a lot of the wetter states. You don't see tons of it here, but it definitely can be something.
Yeah, and the safety code violations could be anything small from, the width of a rail on a staircase to, not having a rail on a staircase or other things like that. So just be advised. All
right, so let's talk a little bit about showings. This is our last slide to talk with you about the headwinds. But this is kind of an issue because we're seeing about an 8% drop in showing traffic compared to this time last year, which is kind of interesting on a national level because Jim and I were just talking on a Colorado level how much more showing traffic we're seeing. So it does show you that buyers are slowing down nationally, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, which is again Colorado, which we'll show you in the next show. It definitely has more positive numbers happening.
Well, tune into everything else we're doing. I'm Anthony Meisner. This is Jim Marion. And
sure.
we're with Front Range Facts. Please tune into other stuff we're doing. We have a bunch of national podcasts we put out every month. We also do a state level one. So hopefully you have a wonderful day. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
Have a great one, folks.